Hi everybody, it's Oksana. In this video I'm going to show you how to make this pendant here. It has two stones, a little tiny one up top and then this slightly bigger one, but overall this is a very small pendant. It's less than 2 inches. It's 1.5 inches tall, so it's quite small and dainty. And this is kind of one of the harder ones to make, so this would not make a very good beginner project. But if you want to see how I made this, just keep watching. So first you will need a coil, and I used the coiling gizmo, but you can just coil around a base wire as well. And this is some 26 gauge round copper dead soft wire, and I made a coil that is 6.5 inches long, and this will kind of vary by stone. I don't know of like a specific formula to use, but I guess you can just see if your stone is smaller than mine, then you can use less, or if it's bigger than mine, then you can just increase the length, maybe something like that. And then I'm using some 22 gauge round wire. So both of these that I'm going to show you are 22 gauge round copper dead soft wire, and the first piece is a piece that I'm going to be coiling around, and it is just under 10 inches long. It's probably a little bit too long, but I prefer to cut my wires a little longer. It's always better than running out, especially since I'm just using copper, which is fairly inexpensive. So then this is going to be a longer piece because I'm going to put this through my coil, and it's really long. It's like 24 inches. So even though the coil itself is not that long, when you start to actually coil it around something, it spreads out, and so that's why you need a longer piece of wire to put through it. So if you didn't make this coil using any kind of tool, like I used the coiling gizmo, just makes it a little faster, then you would just take your 26 gauge wire and you would just coil it around this longer wire, just manually until 6 inches long or however long that was. So what I'm going to do is I put the wire through, and I have a little bit of it peeking out, and then I have a little bit of the 26 gauge wire. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line those up together. And then I'm going to give myself like 2 inches or so on this wire. And I'm going to start wrapping by putting both of these around and just turning. Now this wire is a little floppy. It's only 22 gauge, so you just have to be a little careful because it'll get all bent out of shape on you. But if you use a different gauge, then your coil is going to come out a different length, because when you're wrapping around a thicker wire, the coil will be shorter. Okay, so I'm just very carefully turning, kind of using this to turn and guiding the coil here with my right hand. And then here we go. Once you get it started, it becomes a little easier because then you have something to grip and you can just turn, and it makes it much, much easier. So I am just gonna do this until I run out of coil. And then I'm gonna have end, similar to this on the other side. So I will just trim my little ends and pinch them down and have a finished coil. So here's my finished coil, and then that wire that was going through that initial coil, that really long 22 gauge wire. So I had to trim off quite a bit of it, so you can probably reduce it by like 9 inches and then you'll still have plenty. Mine was way too long. So here's my coil. So now you have a few different options. If you wanted to, you can take a wire and you can wrap it around your coil, kind of in between these little things here, these little coils. And that's a really pretty look. And you can do this with 22 gauge wire, just like this one we have going through the middle. You can do it with half round wire, both, you know, either the half round side up or the flat side up. That's a neat look. Today I am choosing to do it with some 24 gauge wire. So it's just a little thinner. Here it is, 24 gauge wire, round wire. It's just a little thinner than the 22. It's the next step down. And so what you want to do is you want to see where your coil kind of ends here or starts, however you want to think of it. See how it's like right here? So you want this wire to get in there at this entrance and then kind of continue down this path, if you want to think of it that way. It's kind of how I think about it. So we're going to take it and start it and give it a wrap and then kind of lay it in there. And don't pull really hard because it'll actually pop into those coils and just kind of push them out of the way. But also don't make it like super loose either. You want it to just kind of lay down, just firm but gentle. Lay down in between these coils. And again, this is completely optional if you like the look of this, just a little added step, a little added detail, if you will. You can feel free to do this, and I'm just gonna go ahead and finish doing this and then trim off these little ends. So here's my finished coil, and it's just the tiniest bit less than 3 inches. It's about 70 millimeters. And if you are wondering, looks like it's about 5 millimeters thick, right? Maybe just a little bit, maybe 4 millimeters. Maybe if I hold it this way. Anyways, so my stone is 20 millimeters tall. It's a teardrop and it's about 11 wide. I mean, yours doesn't have to be like to the millimeter, but this is what works for me, because if you shape this coil, you can see how it goes around the stone. And there's just the tiniest gap around the stone, but that'll be useful because I'm gonna put kind of like a frame around the stone made out of wire anyways, so that works. So what I'm gonna do now is take some 20 gauge square wire, and I cut it quite long because I'm not sure what I wanna do quite yet, like the finishing touches, so I'd rather have some length so that I have lots of options. So mine is 13 inches. And then you just want to cut yourself a little piece of half round wire, 22 gauge half round wire. This is kind of a step that I do a lot because I'm making a little frame to hold my stone in. So I'm wrapping the half gauge wire around. And I'm putting the flat side of the wire down. It doesn't need to be any specific length, just enough to hold these wires together. And now I'm trimming my ends so they are both on the same side here, so that when I go over it with my pliers, just kind of squishes down, my ends end up here. That's going to be the inside that's up against the stone. So then you can take your finger and kind of make a little bend for the stone to sit in. And then you can kind of do this part laying flat on the table. But I'm just doing it in the air for you so you can see. And I am shaping my wire around my stone, making a little frame. So now that I have those little bends and I know where my frame is going to be, what you want to do is put your wires like this. So spread them out. Instead of having them, these three, like on top of those three, have these inner ones kind of be on the inside. And then see if that works as a frame. That works well as a frame for my stone. Just want to make sure because it could have, got a little discombobulated. So what you want to do is take some 28 gauge wire. You can do 26 as well. This is round wire. And we're just going to do a weave on these wires coming out this way. Spread them out a little so that you can weave around them. Like the ends of them, I mean. Spread like the ends of them out and stuff. And you want to make sure that they stay in this order. Let me show you again really up close. You want to make sure you keep them like this and that they don't switch around. See how it goes this way, this way, this way, and then like that. So I'm going to do the weave. That is the one loop around each wire. You kind of go up by ones like that. Now when you're connecting, see how I did 3 and I'm connecting to this side, you just want to make sure that you don't leave a space there. If you you know, are not very comfortable with this weave, or you have another one that you prefer, you can absolutely do any weave you want. Now I'm going to just check my stone. Okay, still good. So that's how you go up. And then to come down, you kind of go by 2. So you go down 2 wires. And then you kind of go back up by 1 and go 2 again. See that? So that's on the way down. And then that is the whole pattern. So then once you get to the bottom here, you just do 1 wrap around the bottom wire and you start going up and making 1 wrap around each wire. So now 1 wrap around the second from the bottom, 1 wrap around the third from the bottom. So that's pretty much how this pattern goes, and that is going to be the weave for my bail. This is what it looks like when it's not tight. You can kind of see spacing. Then you tighten it up, it looks really nice like this. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take these sidemost wires, I'm going to open them up and I'm going to weave just around these 4 for a bit, and then I'll bring these back in. And this way there's going to be a little piece where these 2 are not woven around, so that I'm going to make them kind of stick out, make like a little bend in them, just for decoration. It's purely optional, but I'm going to continue my weave just around these 4 wires. Alright, so I went up and down and up again here around just these 4 wires, and now I'm taking these middle 2 wires, I'm raising them up, and I'm trying to keep my distance, but I'm going to wrap around just those middle 2 that are left. They're actually like the outer middle 2, and I'm trying to not mess up the spacing. Gotta try really hard to not mess up that spacing. Just for a little bit. Luckily you don't have to do this for very long because it is kind of tricky. Alright, so I think I repeated that pattern maybe like 4 times, just the tiniest bit. It's kind of hard to get in there and tighten this up with all these wires in the way, but I'm gonna try. So now I'm gonna take these wires that are, you know, sticking up here. I'm gonna grab them with my pliers, and you can do round nose pliers as well. That might actually be better. I'm making a bend in them, and I'm trying to put them back into their spot while leaving a little bend in them. See what I mean? So now, looking at them, you can kind of look here in the back as well. So I might have to repeat this weave just like once or twice more until I get to the point where I can connect them. I have a little scrap piece of 20 gauge wire that I bent in half, so it's essentially 2 wires. And I'm gonna put it here in this bend because I wanna maintain spacing. I don't want that to just like close up when I start weaving it, and this will help you bend it in place as well because it won't let you, you know, smush it down too much. So now you can continue weaving your pattern, but it's going to be around all 4 of these middle wires. So we made a bend and we are kind of keeping it that way by keeping those wires in there. But we are going to take these wires out. So see mine move. You want yours to move because we're going to put different wires in there. This was just a little scrap piece that I had just to like as a placeholder. So now theoretically you can just take these out now since it's being held in place, because I'm going to take them out because it's going to be hard for you to see that I am taking these side wires, and after one more go, actually I want to go down since you go up by 1 and then you go down by 2. So I'm going to go ahead and get down here, down by 2. And the last little wrap, I'm gonna go and capture this wire that I've not been capturing. So now I'm doing the, you know, going up by 1, making little wraps all the way up. Oops, I skipped this one. And then once I get to the top, I'm gonna capture that other side wire that is up here at the top. So one little wrap around that. And I'm going to tighten that up. And now you can just continue this weave around all of the wires. And you can just continue this weave until maybe it gets right about to here. So it's tall enough to be just bent into your bale. And these side wires here, if you want to do this now, it may be easier to do it now while they're just barely connected, but you want to kind of wedge your pliers in here and make a little bend like that on each side. And again, you don't have to do that, especially, you know, if you don't like that look. That is totally fine, but I just wanted to do something a little different this time around. So once it is adequate, we're just gonna trim off our little wire ends. Before I trim my wire off, I like to just make a wrap or 2 around a base wire just to help it not unravel easily. And then I'm just pressing down, oops, wrong direction, pressing down the little end of the wire, and also here where the beginning was, the beginning little tail end. So this is my bale, and what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna use my finger, but feel free to use a tool. I'm just gonna bend it into a bale shape. And actually, maybe I should have done this part first, but I'm gonna pop my stone in as well. So when you put your stone there, just grab that backmost wire, push it onto your stone, and do that on both sides, like this. Then your stone should stay in place, and if it feels like it's gonna pop through the front, which it might, what you can do is you can try and grab that wire, that frontmost wire, and just bring that front wire kind of onto your stone a little bit. And so mine's fine, but if you want it to make like an actual bend in this wire. Now we're gonna take our coil, we're gonna bend it so these wires crisscross here at the top. We're gonna take it and make it so that it's going kind of inside underneath these bail wires here. So like into the bail, so to speak. Around our stone like this. So then these little wires, I'm gonna bend them, and you just need to attach them to something, whatever is, you know, close by and easy for you to attach to. So I'm gonna cut mine short so that it's easier to manipulate them. And I'm actually just gonna tuck them into this gap here on my bail. Just like this. I'm going to do that on this side as well. So here is what that looks like so far. I attached the other side. So now flip your pendant over, and then here on the back, take these two innermost wires that are coming from your bail, and I'm just going to twist them by grabbing with my plier and twisting. And you don't have to do this if you don't want to, or if you're using, you know, round wires. This only works for square, but it just gives it a twisted look, which is what I'm going for. So now make sure that you line them up so they're nice and centered, and then bend them up. Just kind of like this, and I'm just having them kind of rest in this little gap on the side here. So I'm holding the wire down with one finger so it doesn't move out of place, and I'm bending it. And then I'm bringing them to the back, like this. And then here on the back, bringing them around this bail, and I'm just trimming so that I'm left with a little end that I will tuck inside of this bail. I'll tuck it in, and I'll just kind of like pinch it down to really have it stay. And then here on the back, I'm just gonna hold the wires so they don't move out of place, but I'm just gonna make a little bend in them. And just kind of press them down, just so it's like a tighter, neater arrangement. So then here they are in the front. And you can either leave them how they are here on the front, or you can put a little bend in them. Just for looks, like that. So here in the back, I'm taking the next set of wires here coming out of the bale. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab these two wires and raise them up a little bit, the ones that are here in the back. And I'm gonna trim this. And so just do one side at a time. So the reason we raise them up is so we can get this wire underneath. And we're making a loop. Basically just to connect these two wires together, because this piece can actually move around a little bit. So by making this little loop and connecting it to the other wire, it's gonna stay in place a little better. There we go. So the end of the wire is pointing down now and it's connected. So I'm gonna do this real quick off camera, same exact thing on this side. Now I'm taking like the tiniest ever little cabochon, little rainbow moonstone cabochon, and it's like 2 millimeters, 2 or 3 millimeters, and like 6 inches or so of 20 gauge round wires. And you can use square if you want. I just wanted to use round because I already have so much square. And we are gonna put them through this little gap. Just push them right through, work them in there. You can do one at a time if it seems like it's not going too well. And so it looks like this, and then we're gonna take our super tiny cabochon. Try not to drop it on the floor because it'll be lost forever. And I am just kind of sitting it on those wires there, the crisscrossing square twisty wires. And now I'm holding it with my thumb. I'm sorry I can't show you, but it'll fall. And I'm taking these wires, these round wires, and I'm just kind of bending them to try and make like little loop, so to speak, around my little cabochon. So there, you can kind of see there, it's obviously not a small enough loop, but just so you can see what I'm talking about. And now we're gonna take that little loop, we're gonna bend it. Sorry, I'm like really afraid this is gonna fall out. So it's like this. You can kind of almost like lift up. See how one of these lifted up? So you're doing this with one wire at a time. And get this like out of the way. I'm gonna get my pliers in here. And I'm gonna squish the top like that. But the inner wires, I'm gonna try and put them through that little hole right above this big cabochon. There's just like a tiny gap there. So I'm gonna get it to the back and then I'm just gonna pull it tight, and you just have to be careful if it starts to get all like loopy. So here those wires are going through the top there, and on the back, I know there's like so many wires going on, but if you find those specific wires, make sure they don't crisscross because that'll kind of mess up how they're looking in the front. And cut and tuck them away into the bale. And then these other wires, you can just kind of have them right next to your cabochon on the side. Just kind of bend them back into that little shape. So just kind of like this, and then you can just bring them to the back. And so here's what that looks like. And here in the back, you just have to find a good spot, if you can, to tuck them in somewhere. So I'm gonna try and tuck them in here underneath these wires. All right, so here's what it looks like from the front and the back. And if your stone got a little bit loose, your main stone, from putting those wires through the top, because sometimes you can do that, you just want to grab this wire, the inner wire, and kind of bend it onto your stone at the top. If it got loose at the top, I mean your stone. So now you have these wires left. And if you want to do a little added detail with them, kind of maybe secure them, like wrap them around somewhere, maybe do a little crisscross thing with them, whatever you want. They're just kind of extra wires that are there if you need them. Cut them short and tuck them away. Alright, so that is it. That's my little pendant here, little 2-stone coiled pendant. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.